Hey, joining us now is State Senator from Northern Virginia, Democrat Mark Herring. He is also a candidate for the Democratic nomination for Attorney General. That'll be decided in a June 11th primary. Senator, great to have you with us.
Well, thank you, John, for having me back, and it's good to be back on the show.
Now, I want to get right to the primary first. On June 11th, I had predicted earlier that you were going to win this easily. I know you guys don't take anything for granted in the business that you're in. We just saw a poll that came out the other day, showed it a little bit closer than I thought it would be. What do you make of that? Anything?
There are lots of polls that are out there and that are going to be done. Our internal polling shows that I'm winning, and actually going back to the other poll, it shows that I beat Obenshain versus my opponent, and so it does show that I'm the better candidate to run against Mark Obenshain, who's the Republican nominee. But look, there are lots of polls out there. They say all kinds of different things. My internal polls show that I'm up and I'm winning, and I think more important than that is that we've got a lot of volunteers, not only doing phone banking but also canvassing. And we track the results of those contacts and conversations with Democratic primary voters, and it's consistent with what we've seen in our internal polling, which has me, winning solidly, and so I feel really confident about where we are. Okay,
well, I need to get a winner here, being that I predicted you win, especially after I spent 13 hours on the air saying there was no way that E.W. Jackson would ever get 50% of the vote at that convention.
And first of all, I'd like to compliment you on your coverage of the convention. I thought it was a really good idea. It was a great idea. It was a public service. I was campaigning throughout that day around the state, but I tried to pick up and listen to the show in between campaign events, and I've got to think it must have been a fascinating spectacle to be right there ringside as you were.
It was definitely interesting. And now that you brought that up, I got to give a little promo. We're also going to be covering the June 11th Virginia Democratic primary live all night, starting at 6 p.m. With myself, my co-anchor Ben Tribbett, Norm Leahy will be with us also, and we're going to be live that night. Details to follow, but it'll be starting at 6 p.m. And we're going to be live at the Ralph Northam headquarters in Norfolk. We got to pick somewhere to go. We picked that, so that'll be interesting. We'll see how it plays out. And
we'll
obviously,
have to make sure we have some kind of feed so that we can report results from where we are.
We will. We'll have somebody on our staff up there as well. I want to get to one of your criticisms since Senator Obenshain, your colleague, became the official Republican nominee for Attorney General. You have been a pretty strident critic of his on his Personhood amendment starting in 2007 and then reintroduced in 2012. Why do you take such issue with that, Senator?
Well, the ramifications of that legislation are very dramatic, and the Personhood bill, in essence, declares that life begins at conception, and the practical result of that is that a number of common forms of birth control would probably be illegal, and access to those types of contraceptives would be illegal. Mm-hmm. And that's just so far out of the mainstream, and it's indicative of a mindset that really puts women through the ringer and is utterly insensitive to what people are going through, and it reflects, I think, a serious blind spot in his judgment and those who are supporting it. It's similar to legislation that was soundly defeated in Mississippi, mm-hmm. and it's not good policy. It's bad for Virginia families. It's bad policy and should not become the law of the land.
Now, Senator, what about the miscarriage aspect of that? I mean, how did that work?
Well, there are, you mentioned initially the Personhood bill, and really that is just one piece of legislation that Mark Obenshain has introduced that mm-hmm. that really do reflect that kind of a mindset. There have been a series of legislation that he's supported or introduced that have been way outside the mainstream. So one was the Personhood bill, but another one would have required, and this is a different bill, would have required women to report instances of miscarriage to the local or state police within 24 hours, and so that there could be an investigation that follows. That's a very traumatic time for women, and it just goes to show that there is this mindset that is way outside the mainstream, and this was not something that should have come as a surprise. Ultimately, that legislation was withdrawn amid a huge firestorm about it.
Right. Now, the advocates say that was introduced for health reasons, that it would somehow be sure that women had the proper health care. Do you buy that?
No, not at all. And this should come as no surprise. It should not have been a surprise to Mark Obenshain when he introduced the bill. It had actually been introduced a few years before that, in 2005. And there was a huge firestorm. A delegate had introduced it. There was a huge firestorm when that was introduced, and ultimately that delegate, seeing the enormous opposition to that kind of a concept, withdrew the bill. And then a few years later, Obenshain reintroduces it. And so it's not as though the level of opposition could have been a surprise, or the impact that it would have on women across the state was something that might have been unknown or taken Obenshain by surprise. Surely he knew full well what he was doing and did it anyway.
This is the John Fredericks Show. We're with State Senator from the 33rd District of Virginia, Mark Herring. He is a candidate, one of two candidates, vying for the Democratic nomination for Attorney General to square off with Republican Mark Obenshain in November. Senator, there are some that say, that Virginia has a history with their Attorney General of being somewhat conservative, pro-property rights, things like that. Your critics say, look, Mark Herring just too liberal for Virginia. How do you respond to that?
No, I think it's just the opposite. And I think the Republicans will say, oh, well, we're so far apart at odds on a lot of these issues. Well, it's not because, I'm too far to the left. It is that they are so far to the right that where I am on these issues is much more reflective of where most Virginians are on these issues. They have just moved so far to the right over the years that it seems like we're farther apart. These issues about making sure that women have access to affordable, quality health care, that is something that most Virginians think is a good thing. But yet, Mark Obenshain and the Republicans on the ticket and Republicans in the General Assembly have been making it harder for women to access health care, making it harder and more expensive. No, it's more that they are so far to the right that there's a big distance between where we are. But where I am is much more in sync with where most Virginians are on these issues.
Now let's get to the potential Medicaid expansion in Virginia. You've been a proponent of that. It's going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars. The federal government's going to step in the short term. But your critics say, look, what happens after the federal money runs out? It could bankrupt the state. How do you play that out?
No, I think they're wrong on that. First of all, let's take a look at the benefits it's going to bring to Virginia. It's going to make health care accessible for hundreds of thousands of Virginians who currently don't have it because they can't afford it. That's going to be good not only for the well-being of those individuals, but it's also going to mean that that the state and those of us who have insurance aren't going to face higher premiums as a result of the cost shifting that occurs when the uninsured show up in a much sicker condition at the emergency room. So there are going to be savings achieved there, and it's going to be good for Virginians, and it's going to bring billions of our tax dollars back to Virginia into our economy to help create thousands of jobs in the healthcare industry. In the long term, in terms of the cost,
right.
100% initially is going to be paid by the federal government for, I think, the 7 years, and then it steps down to 90% after that. Those are good. Again, we will see the cost savings over the years in terms of the uninsured who are right now presenting themselves in a much sicker condition at the emergency room, where the cost is much greater to treat them, and then those costs are currently being passed on to either the state government, the federal government, or to those of us with insurance in the form of higher premiums. And so it's going to be good for the state, not only in the short and medium term, but also the long run.
Well, there is a legitimate argument that says we're actually paying for it now through indigent care.
That's right. And right now, we saw in this past budget that there is actually a net positive to the state, because we as a state have been putting money into indigent care in addition to the higher premiums that individuals and businesses are paying on their insurance premiums. So we are seeing those cost savings now, and something that is not often talked about, but I think this is a good approach, is that a lot of the money that is being saved is being put toward the back end on the Medicaid expansion costs.
Senator Herring, being from Northern Virginia, why did you support project labor agreements? Are you beholden to big labor in a right-to-work state like Virginia?
Well, I think there's some common myths about project labor agreements. Look at Phase 1 of the Dulles Rail Project, for example. That has a project labor agreement, and it's working really well. It's making sure that the project is coming in with quality work, on budget, and a great safety record. And so the project labor agreements do not require anyone to join a union. So it actually helps keep costs down. It helps make the project run smoother. And I think it should be an option for agencies when they go out to bid. If they think it's going to be something that's going to be helpful for the project, if they think it's going to be something that will help keep costs down, then it's something that should be an option for the state to help save taxpayers money.
Senator, do you believe that Virginia should remain a right-to-work state?
I think there's no serious effort underway to repeal the right-to-work laws, and honestly, I don't know where that's coming from. So I don't see that there's any effort to change our right-to-work laws. There was an effort to enshrine that into the state constitution. I don't think that was necessary, and I voted against it.
Senator Herring, final question. If indeed you are the Democratic nominee, frame the big debate between yourself and Senator Obenshain.
Well, I think particularly given the ticket that the Republicans have nominated, you've got Cuccinelli at the top, E.W. Jackson, who has said some truly outlandish statements, and Mark Obenshain. All of them, both with their record and their statements, show that they are far to the right, representing really a narrow band of the ideological spectrum. On the Democratic side, regardless of which of the candidates win, you're going to have a ticket that is more focused on issues that are important to Virginia families, to businesses, and you're going to see a very stark contrast. And I think where Virginia's hearts and minds are is more moderate, and this hard right turn that Cuccinelli, Jackson, and Obenshain want to take us is not really where Virginia hearts are right now.
Now, this is interesting because Mark Obenshain is your colleague. You've served with him in the Senate for some time. Putting politics aside and your ideological difference aside for a second, just man to man, mano a mano, do you guys generally get along?
Well, sure. We're friends, we're colleagues, and Mark is a nice guy and has a nice family. But he is not someone who I would want to have either as my senator or as an attorney general. And his voting record is one that shows that he is again far to the right, and that he's got a mindset that is one that attacks women's rights, attacks LGBT rights, attacks voting rights, and that's just very different from where I think Virginia should be headed.
Well, it sounds like if indeed, Senator, you become the Democratic nominee for Attorney General, it sounds like we're going to have a very spirited debate. Senator, we want to thank you for your time. We look forward to having you back on, and good luck in your upcoming primary. And being my last prediction was so bad, I really need to get off the schneid. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and look forward to coming back on the show soon.
Senator Mark Herring from the 33rd District of Virginia, Northern Virginia. He's a candidate for Attorney General. That's going to be decided on a June 11th statewide Democratic primary. The John Fredericks Show is going to be there starting at 6 p.m. over the Internet. Just go to the John Fredericks Show, and we're going to have a live coverage. We're going to be in Norfolk from the Ralph Northam headquarters. That's not an endorsement. We have to pick someplace to go. That's where we're going to be set up. This is the John Fredericks Show.